Okay. Well. We are back. We're talking Knicks. It's been a minute. We did a little bit like a mini recap of the Hawks game. It was last minute. It was shitty. We're back. We are back talking New York Knicks basketball, and what a way to return, you know? As the Knicks take down the Hawks 108 to 105 in Atlanta last night. This is a Knicks team that's been friggin' struggling. That's you know they've been winning games. I believe last night was their 51st win. Um, but there has been a lot of maddening inconsistency in just the way they come out and play. The process isn't always great. The you're not always seeing them do things you want to see them do in terms of the way they run their offense, in terms of the way they play defense, in terms of how they treat defense when their offense isn't working. There's a lot of things within those wins and losses that just hasn't inspired a ton of confidence in this Knicks team over the last several weeks. Last night was their first win against a team above 500 in a month. They said it a couple of times on the telecast, and it was the game they almost lost, and it was a game where they missed open shots, and it was a game where they turned the ball over plenty. It was a wild basketball game. It was a very physical game, but it was physical in a way where there wasn't too many whistles. It was very fast. You felt that playoff intensity with two teams that are still fighting for specific seeds. And the building was very loud last night. You heard the Knicks fans have their moments. You even heard some of the Hawks fans have their moments, although that arena is plenty full of Knicks fans down in Atlanta. But yeah, it wasn't the most perfect game. It was a game that featured a lot of missed opportunities on the glass. It was a game that featured plenty of turnovers, especially in that first half. The Knicks start the game with two straight turnovers that lead to two straight Hawks buckets. They finish the first half with 11 of their 15 turnovers in the game. A game of plenty runs. The Hawks go on this 12-0 run in the second quarter. The Knicks go on this big 17-5 run in, I think, was the third quarter. The fourth quarter was very wild. You got the end there with that final shot. Was it McCollum who gets that shot off at the horn? Doesn't get it off in time at the review. Call stands. Just a wild game that almost went the other way. But at the end of the day, you look up and the Knicks pick up a 3-point victory to get their 51st win of the season. And they tried to get this 2 seed. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it was a huge first quarter. No, it was a huge fourth quarter for Brunson. You got a big game from Towns. Mikhail and OG played very well. That was nice to see them play well together. Something we've talked about before. Deuce, it's nice to see Deuce McBride finding a little bit of a shooting rhythm the last couple of nights. He's just come back from the injury. Looks better and better. Mitchell Robinson was so fantastic last night. He was far and away the best Knick on the floor. A big part of some of these very telling numbers was because of Mitch. The Knicks outscore the Hawks in the paint 52-34. The Knicks at the basket outshoot the Hawks 75% to 42%. So, and that was on the same volume. Great job there, and Mitch was a big part of that. And Mitch was a big part of sort of a new rotation for the Knicks last night as Mike Brown kind of tinkered and you saw some different looks. First of all, there was no Tyler Kolek or Jose Alvarado in this game. I think that's expected because the Knicks were fully healthy coming in. So I think when you're talking about this team and the playoff rotation, it's probably going to be similar to what you saw last night, where, it might be a bit of an 8.5 man. You know, you'll have your starters, you'll have Deuce, Shemet, and Mitch on the bench, and then your 8.5 man, might fluctuate between Clarkson and Alvarado, and maybe even you see Kolek. It's going to be situational. You might see an occasional ninth man with Sohan at the end of quarters. Who knows what happens? But I think last night is more of what you're going to see. But what really stood out, as I'm about to sneeze, was um, Mike Brown going away from staggering. So usually what you'll see is Mike Brown stagger Brunson and Cat, right? Where you will see Cat play with the second unit. He'll play in some 5-out rotations at the top of second and fourth quarters as Brunson sits. That's usually what we get. Last night, Mike Brown tried something new, and he extended Cat's minutes at other moments in the game, but replaced his minutes at the top of the second quarter, at the top of the fourth quarter, with Mitch Robinson as Brunson sat. So it was Mitch out there with those guys. And I found that very interesting. You definitely saw some of the drawbacks in both of those stints, where it was Mitch and OG next to three smalls. So the lack of size, definitely hurt the Knicks in a few one-on-one matchups. In the second quarter, I recall you had Jonathan Kuminga overpowering Deuce on the post for a bucket. You had Risa Shea with a putback dunk over Deuce under the basket. There was a pick and pop that put Clarkson on Okongwu off of a switch. Okongwu shoots right over him. A little too much room for a three-point make. In the fourth quarter, McCollum with a post-up jumper on Deuce. Alexander Walker shooting over Brunson a couple of times. So the lack of size hurt them. It, of course, hurt them on the glass. There was a lot of second chances for Atlanta, especially in those fourth quarter lineups. But overall, in that lineup where Mitch played over Cat with no Brunson, they were a -1 in those two stints. They won the second quarter shift by 1 point, and they lost the fourth quarter shift by 2 points. But I think that was pretty purposeful. And my hope is that Mike Brown, if it wasn't purposeful, saw that, hey, when I do this rotation, when I play Cat in these other stints, that means I can lean more into Brunson Cat actions because it means they're going to be sharing the floor together for a lot longer than usual. And so you saw that last night, and you saw the benefits of what that could look like. And so Karl Anthony Towns last night gets the game ball from me because he goes for 21 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, a couple steals, a block. He shoots 9 for 12 from the floor, 7 for 8 from 2, 2 for 4 from 3, and that was across 32 minutes. I thought he was great. I thought he's been playing some of his best basketball of the season, or I should say he is playing his best basketball of the season over the last month plus, really since the second half, but there was like a string of 3 or 4 games before the second half started where I really thought the noticeable difference was there. And of course, there's been some ups and downs throughout that. Progress is not always linear, but he's played great ball for a while now. And again, this Brunson Cat 2-man game, it's been something that's not been perfect since they've been together. But I do feel like it's gotten much better in the second half of the season. Unironically, the same time Cat started to play better. And I do still think it's going to be very lineup dependent come playoff time. A lot of teams, a lot of playoff teams have the personnel to cross match and not guard Cat traditionally. But also I think that a lot of it does come down to Brunson. And Brunson needs to make those quick reads. And he doesn't always make those quick reads. But I thought last night, and maybe it's because the shot's not falling, I thought Brunson made very timely passes and made sharp reads to Cat consistently. And when those two guys are working together, since you've got a small who can score at all three levels, and you've got a big who can score at all three levels, that is so difficult to guard. That's unique and unlike many other tandems in the NBA. And it takes such a toll on a defense because it forces them to send a third man to the action to help. And that's going to leave somebody else wide open. And you saw the uncomfort to switch Brunson Cat pick and rolls. And Atlanta wasn't switching as much because they were afraid of that mismatch when the big man, Okongwu in this instance, was on Cat. And so when Okongwu was on Cat, and he was on Cat throughout the entire night, the Knicks took full advantage of that. Because with Cat, he's going to be up on the perimeter when he's being used. That's where he operates. Up top, sometimes on the pinch post, but sometimes at the very top of the key. And when he's up on the perimeter, because he's a threat to shoot, when the center is on him, that means the center is going to be up on the perimeter as well. So it does a lot of things. That gives Brunson his switch when you run Brunson Cat pick and roll. Now the center, if they decide to switch, is on Brunson. You've got your matchup for him. You've got Cat, who got open looks up top with Okongwu, sagged off, and then drop coverage when they decided not to switch, right? Which traditional slower bigs are more comfortable playing drop. So that gives him the open look there. And it's going to give Cat a big to attack off the dribble, off the pop. Okongwu is about 3 inches shorter than Cat. That's something Cat can overpower and take off the dribble like he does. He loves to go to that pump and go, which we're going to get into in a second. And it clears up the paint. When the bigs up top having to guard Cat, it clears up the paint. It clears up the paint so Cat can hit his back cutters for assists. Right? And I thought the Knicks did a really nice job with off screens to counter those Atlanta switches. They were using split cuts and slips and flare screens, back screens, rip screens, etc. to beat the switch behind. And Cat was consistently finding the Knick wings and guards early on this way. Right? There was a possession very early in the first quarter. Cat's up top with the ball. Off of the ball, Atlanta switches Mikhail's rip screen for Brunson. But right as they do that, Mikhail slips the switch. He's open on the roll. Cat finds him, layup. So from that possession, again, this was very early in the first quarter. If you want to go back and look at it, it's on my Instagram page. There are two things to point out from that specific possession. Again, Atlanta's switching high, so that's going to open up the cut, the roll. And with the big up on Cat, the basket's wide open. There's no rim protector. About 5 or so minutes later, middle of the first quarter, Cat's up top with the ball again. Atlanta switches OG's off screen for Hart. OG slips it this time. Cat finds him, open dunk for OG. Same exact thing. And then the Knicks started to spam those Brunson Cat actions over and over and over and over. And actually, if you rewind a bit to the top of the first quarter, they went to a Brunson Cat pick and roll. Atlanta doubles the pick and roll. So they're on Brunson, 2 on the ball. That's going to open Cat on the roll. Atlanta now has to send help to Cat off of Mikhail from the weak dunker. Brunson hits Cat. Cat hits Mikhail. Mikhail an open dunk. Again, the big's up on Cat. The basket's open. And also Atlanta blitzing Brunson opens up the roll. Go to the middle of the second quarter. It is a Brunson Cat pick and roll. Okongwu is in a high drop on the ball side of the screen. So he's in an unbalanced position and has to recover back to the roll off of the Brunson pocket pass to Cat. Cat attacks him downhill with momentum. Okongwu's got no shot. Strong finish at the basket. About a minute later, you get a Cat Brunson handoff action at the top. I believe this is called a get action. Brunson gets the handoff. The Hawks don't switch it, so the point of attack defender is now behind off the screen. Defense is now forced to help the drive off the strong corner. Brunson makes that read, finds OG open on the corner. Late in the second quarter, Another Brunson Cat pick and roll. Okongwu switches to Brunson. Brunson takes Okongwu in space, isolation, bucket. Top of the third quarter, they go to a Brunson Cat pick and roll again. Okongwu in drop coverage on the ball side off the screen again. So Brunson hits Cat. This time he pops. Brunson hits Cat on the pop. Okongwu again. Off balance recovery because he was on the other side. Cat gets into his pump and go, drives on him, gets by him, overpowers him for a dunk. Middle of the third quarter, another Brunson Cat pick and roll. Atlanta switches it this time, but the point of attack defender is late to switch to Cat on the pop. Cat drives the late switch, gets by him. That forces Okongwu to switch back to Cat. By then it's too late. He finishes through contact for an and-one dunk. 30 seconds later, Brunson, Cat, Hart, double drag action. Hart's man's going to stay with him on his first screen. Atlanta's going to blitz Brunson on Cat's screen. Cat pops to beat the double team. So Brunson's going to hit Cat right away. Cat goes right into his pump and go on the off-balance recovery from Okongwu. It's another finish at the basket. Late fourth quarter, the Knicks go back to it. Brunson Cat run pistol to get Brunson a bucket. You get a Brunson Cat slob handoff action. Atlanta doesn't switch this one, so Brunson's point of attack defender is behind off the screen again. He gets a wide open lane with the big up on Cat. Easy floater in the short mid-range area. So over and over and over, I just loved it. It looked beautiful, and it's all about the Knicks leaning into that as much as possible. Again, it's been better this year. It's been better in the second half, but it still can be better overall. There was still a point last night in the fourth quarter where the Knicks went away from it, where Brunson was looking for the CJ McCollum switch instead by using Hart and using McHale to come over and pick and roll for him. But they call a timeout, and right after the timeout, they go back to Brunson Cat. It was in that pistol set, and then it was in that slob action where they went to it just over and over. So my hope, and my hope has been a hope for the entire season, is that Mike Brown sees this, and he sees what it looks like when you've got Brunson and Cat running action on the strong side with traditional matchups in that pick and roll, while your three weak side players are being treated as weak side shooters, OG, McHale, and Hart himself. And I hope that he sees that and he's willing to put them in space more often in the playoffs. Because let's be honest, at the same time, come playoffs, if you run into a team at some point that, and they will, if they get that far, that has the personnel to cross match and not play the Brunson Cat pick and roll traditionally with a wing, the Knicks, then they have to keep doing what they've had to deal with for 2 years now, right? They have to be perfect. If they're not going to shake up the starting rotation, they've got to be perfect. They either have to go to that Brunson pick and roll and spam it, which is going to ice out Cat on the dunker. And then when Hart is left open, he's going to have to take those threes over and over, and you hope and pray that in a playoff series he'll make them. That's not really a great game plan. Or they can still use the Brunson Cat pick and roll when they're cross-matched, when Cat and Hart are cross-matched, but just hope to death that those auto switches with whatever wing is on Cat doesn't make life too difficult on the pick and roll. Also not a great game plan. So, not going to say the word, but it starts with a 5 and it ends with an out. But I do hope we see more of that come playoff time, obviously. I want to talk a little bit more. And we'll do that the second we get back, because I thought there was a specific center on this team not named Carl who was also spectacular. And we'll talk about that guy in a sec.
Quick break here, guys. Stay connected with BD4 on social media. Follow us on Instagram and X at BD4Pod, and find us on Facebook by searching BD4. Don't miss out. Join the conversation. Want more BD4? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an episode. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and share with your fellow fans. Don't forget to ring that bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. Love BD4 but don't have the time to sit down and watch? Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and keeps the conversation going.
Okay, welcome back to the show, episode 1034 of the podcast. I appreciate you all tuning into the show. Last night was a fantastic game for Karl-Anthony Towns. We just dove into a whole bunch of that. Hopefully I didn't rush through it. I feel like I talk very fast sometimes. Just part of me being ADHD. But I also thought this was a freaking spectacular game for Mitchell Robinson, who we're going to hand the game ball to him from the second unit for the 21st time this year. He gets a game ball. 8 points, 12 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds, 2 steals, 3 blocks. He was a +4, 20 minutes played. Just doing all of the Mitchell Robinson things. You know, I don't know if I've said this before, but he's like the center version of Josh Hart, where he just does so many different things outside of the usual, like all the intangible stuff he'll do. And it doesn't always show up on the box score. You know, diving for loose balls, screening, rolling, things like that. But of course, you got your putbacks, you've got your blocks, you've got your switches, you got the rebounding all over the glass. Big rebounds all night, dominating second unit bigs, tremendous second quarter, big bucket in the third quarter to either tie or take the lead. Big third quarter overall to lead that 17-5 run we mentioned. And another big bucket in the fourth, I believe, to tie the game. Big perimeter block in the fourth quarter, which led to an OG transition dunk. Just big moments throughout. Worked in all types of lineups, working with Cat and the double big lineups, running horns, running double drag. Worked with the second unit, like we mentioned, at the top of the second and fourth. Working with Brunson and pick and roll in those lineups. Beating high coverage, right? Really, really, he's improved as a pinch post playmaker this year, and he's improved as a short roll playmaker. And when Mitch and Brunson run together, you see how much he's improved on those short pick and rolls when he needs to put the ball on the floor or make a pass. And this is something we brought up before, but those, those, maybe we talked about it a few weeks ago, Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby being these elite corner shooters matters less for the shots themselves, but more for the pressure that they can put on a defense because of them just being threats on the corners. And what that does is it forces the defense to make very difficult decisions. You're either going to have to tag off the pick and roll, and now you're going to get burnt on the pass to the corner, or you don't tag, you stay home, and you're giving up an open roll. And I thought there were a couple of instances in this game where we saw that with Brunson, Mitch, Mikal, and OG, where you had Brunson as ball handler, Mitch as the short pick and roll playmaker, and Mikal and OG as your corner spacers. So the Knicks run high pick and roll with Atlanta up in high coverage. They double the ball side off the action, so they're on Brunson. That's going to open the short roll for Mitch. Brunson makes the pocket hit. Mitch, from the short roll, on one possession, he finishes at the basket with the help coming too late because he's afraid to rotate off the corner man, which was Mikal at the time. And then there's another one where he made a pass to OG on the corner with the low man stepping down to tag. OG gets ball, he knocks it down. So that is such a key, having both of your wings knocking down shots simultaneously, which again, we've talked about, but also Brunson making those good, clean reads out of doubles, out of blitzes to the short roll pocket. Something he has at times gotten better at this year, but at times also struggled, I guess, depending on the wingspan of the two guys who were blitzing. But I thought that was great. And OG and Mikal continue to also be great on the defensive end. Mike Brown last night, I thought was pretty smart with it, and you saw right out of the gate, he had Towns guard Daniels, who's a point guard. He had OG guard Okongwu, who's a big. And he had Brunson just on McCollum, who's an off guard. So putting Towns on Daniels and OG on Okongwu was so the Knicks could switch the pick and roll without worrying about the mismatch. Right? You didn't have to worry about putting Cat and Brunson in action on the pick and roll, on the pick and pop. And I think that's a very good strategy to go to. It's something the Knicks have done occasionally. You know, they've done it with OG on Joel Embiid. They've done it with OG on Pascal Siakam. Just cross-matching instead of guarding traditionally, just so you can get that switch in your favor and take away the pick and roll because they don't want that switch. So I thought that was very noticeable, and it worked. I thought Cat was very good just overall defensively. And shout out to Josh Hart, because listen, Josh Hart last night, as bad as he played, and he didn't play a great game. He passed up looks. He didn't want the ball at times. He didn't want to shoot, you know, the normal stuff that we talk about. And he took a lot of flack for getting minutes in the fourth quarter. Listen, he played some of the best defense I've seen him play as a Knick, at least one-on-one wise. You know, there was some off-ball stuff throughout the game, but some of those late defensive isolation possessions, he was up in the grill, sliding his feet, very active hands, just staying with his assignment. And it worked. He got some stops. He grabbed some big rebounds down the stretch. So I think he deserves to get some love too. And again, with Mitch in those lineups where he was next to three smalls, as bad as the rebounding was, I do love the defensive upside when he's out there with OG. And then you throw McHale in there over Clarkson, and you keep Deuce on the floor. I mean, that is a defensive lineup, you know. And I get that Nickeil Alexander-Walker had a big night. He scored 36 points. He shot 12 for 19. He was 7 out of 11 from 3. A lot of that was just tough shot making, beating tough defense. There was nothing the Knicks could do about that. So, was there some lapses, some transition defensive stuff? Again, the rebounding. But yes, that's all true. I did think the defensive effort was there. And I thought a lot of guys really showed that top to bottom. Even Jalen Brunson, I thought was good defensively. And I do want to touch a bit on Jalen Brunson before we wrap up here. Jalen Brunson, as usual, when he struggles, because he is a New York Knick and the rest of American sports fans are very triggered by the thought of New York City for some reason. And also because he is a New York Knick, New York Knicks fans don't know how to enjoy things. When he's struggling, he always takes this unnecessary, over-the-top, absolute bullshit criticism from fools who call themselves fans, who probably should know how to watch sports by now, but don't. Because the bottom line is, no matter how much he hurts your feelings with whatever it is, being a New Yorker and playing the way he does, which triggers people because at his size, he has to find ways to get creative. Whatever. The bottom line is he is still a top 15 to top 10 player in this league, and he's still having a great year. He's scoring 26 points per game. He's shooting 46%. He's shooting 37% on his threes, 84% on his free throws. So probably relax with the criticism a little bit. That said, I do think it's fair, if you're just reasonably speaking, to be a little bit concerned about what we've been seeing, because he has had a down season. You know, it has been his worst season as a Knick when a lot of us thought it would be his best. He's not been as efficient. He's not been scoring consistently as normal. And since the ankle injury, and I think that was the Sacramento game, he's not been the same. Right? Since coming back, you can see that that ankle is preventing him from doing what he normally can do at a very elite rate, where the athleticism is just not quite the same. He's not able to get that same separation. That first step is not what it usually is. And maybe the Knicks should have held him out a little bit longer during that period. Maybe they should still hold him out longer before the postseason comes up here. You know, I personally, I don't really care if it's the 2, 3, or the 4 seed. Although I will say that the one matchup that does scare me in the first round is the Charlotte matchup more than anything. But I just hope that he still has that extra step against those tougher wing defenders when we get to the playoffs. That will make it more tough for him to move and to do more work, because there will be a time where he will be tested. So that is a bit of a concern. But one thing is for sure, whether he's having a great game or having a great season or not, he's always going to be there in the clutch. And that should at least give you some optimism. And last night, I don't think there's going to be a better example to point that out, because he was having a horrific shooting game. 13 points entering the fourth quarter last night. 13 points, 5 for 16, 1 for 5 from 3, 2 for 4 from the free throw line. Now, the process was pretty good. He made really good passes, as we said, and he got really good looks, but he just missed everything. Couldn't find the bottom of the ocean. Come the fourth quarter, he turns it on. And as we consistently see him do, which we'll back up with metrics in 2 seconds, he goes for 17 points in the fourth period, shoots 6 for 10 from the floor, and makes all 3 of his foul shots. Yeah, do you want to argue he should have missed that third one? Whatever. On the season, despite nobody talking about it, even if he's not going to win Clutch Player of the Year again, he still had a very clutch season. In the final 5 minutes of games that are within 5 points, that's defined as clutch in the NBA. He's 8th in total points. He's shooting 60% true shooting, meaning he's 48% from the field, 44% from 3, and 79% from the foul line. Still very, very good. And if you go and dwindle it down to the final 30 seconds of a game that's within 5 points, he is laugh out loud good. It gets even better, where he's 10th in total points, but he's got an 81% true shooting percentage. He's 64% from the field, 57% from 3, 69% from the foul line. Just incredible. The guy is always going to be there at the end of the day. So in very short, to answer the question, if I'm a little bit worried, not that much. No. There's like, if we were to put the worry on a scale from 1 to 10 to how worried I am about Jalen Brunson not being what he is in the playoffs, I would say it's at about a 4. I'm not that worried. So he continues to be good even when he apparently isn't. And so he takes the Knicks home down the stretch, because that's what he does, and that's what superstars do. So, with that said, we've got a day off today. We've got a day off tomorrow. And the Knicks head back out there on Thursday to conclude their regular season with 3 games at home. It's a 3-game homestand where they've got a back-to-back Thursday, Friday against Boston and Toronto, both 7:30 p.m. games. And then Sunday is their final game of the regular season, 6 p.m. against Charlotte. So 3 tough opponents, but obviously one of those opponents has been a punching bag for the Knicks. Another one has been a team that they have overcome in recent years. And the Sunday game against the Hornets, that's the matchup that I talked about being a tough one for the Knicks. So with that said, you've got the Boston Celtics on Thursday. We'll see what happens there. Big standings implications for that game. If you still care about the 2 seed, we'll see. But to wrap this up, we'll get to our trivia question of the day here. And that is to name the 2 former Knicks who appeared in games for the Hawks this season. Name the 2 former Knicks who appeared in games for the Hawks this season. Okay? So let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. And that's going to be it for this show. I do appreciate everybody who's tuned in. Episode 1034 of the podcast. Thanks for tuning into BD4. We appreciate you for tuning into BD4. You can find this podcast on many different platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can listen to it. You can watch it. So I do appreciate you all. And I will see you in the very next show. As for my Yankees fans, I'll see you after the Athletics series. Knicks fans, I will see you after this Celtics game on Thursday. Appreciate you all tuning in. See you soon. Hey guys, thank you for listening to BD4. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.